Well, we're back. Maybe with more mechanical hijinks. I don't know. You see, the thing is, talking about certain periods of my life, and you got to realize the mechanical thing was probably maybe 15 years going on. And the hustling thing, well, we're still doing it. So that continues. But there's, like I said, there's stories and there's also a postscript to yesterday. Because what I didn't elaborate on was mechanical mishaps, shall we say, which happened. I went through maybe the first 10 years of this shit with the usual, a cut here, bruise here, backache there, whatever. But when we started getting toward the end of my run, that's when shit hit the fan, so to speak. Injuries, whatever, a couple good ones. One was basically, if you know what a slide hammer is, it's this big metal bar with a fixed thing on one side and this big metal piece that slid back and forth on the other side. And it opened up, there was like 3 prongs on the end that would go in, and you had to pull rear wheel bearings out with these things. And it would go in, you'd tighten the thing up, they'd get down there, and you'd take the metal slide, you'd hold this in your left hand, and bang, 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 till it came out. Well, one day I'm doing this, and it ain't fucking happening, and my hands are getting greasier, I'm getting more pissed off, something you shouldn't do when you're working with things that can hurt you. You should just put it down and walk away. That was a hard lesson learned. So I'm winding up with this thing. This is not fucking happening. I finally whip up, let go, and my index finger slides, and bam! It exploded like a fucking grape got stepped on. They said they heard me yell 3 blocks away. Well, they call the first aid squad, who comes up and asks me where my finger is, and I said, it's still attached to me. This shit's hanging out of it like a tendon and shit. I'm covered with fucking grease. They rushed me down to, I think it was Passaic General. And it happened that someone I had been friendly with, the Dr. Ibarola, was there, who came out and stitched me up and sent me on my merry way. Of course, I couldn't do shit with this hand for a couple weeks, but that was just one little incident. Another one was, I was doing an exhaust job, and I made the mistake of looking up when somebody shook the tailpipe, and I got a face full of rust, which went into my fucking eyes, under my glasses, and I had to get rushed to the hospital again to get my eyes flushed out. So that's when I told my wife, I said, something's knocking at my fucking door, and I'm not going to answer it. But there was other things that happened. I'm working at Sunrise, Texaco, and this huge storm whipped up. And like I said, we had guard dogs, 2 German Shepherds, Bobo and Princess. Bobo was a big, goofy male. Princess was a vicious female. And Princess already was in trouble for biting a couple people, but Charlie kept it under wraps. Well, this storm is really whipping up so much that the Texaco sign, the big, huge, hard plastic Texaco sign by the corner, broke loose and came down and smashed to pieces on the wrecker. Charlie yells, get the dogs inside. There's shit flying off the fucking roof. I go get the 2 dogs, put them on a leash, come around the corner and slip on something, go down, whack my head against the side of the building. Princess runs across the street and bites this guy waiting for the bus. Now I'm fucking dazed, I'm trying to get up, and this guy runs over and starts beating me over the head with his umbrella. I'm like, what the fuck, dude? So finally they get him out of there. The cops come back and they say, the guy's foot's fucked up. He's going to sue, we want the dog. Well, Charlie wasn't going to give up the dog because Charlie really loved that dog for some reason. I didn't. But he snuck the dog out of town that night. So that was another fucked up thing that happened. Working at the Getty one time. See, today they got these electric lifts which basically have 4 feet that, you drive over this thing and it picks up the car and you got the whole open thing to work with. Well, back then we didn't have them. We had hydraulic lifts which were built into the floor of the gas station. Well, I'm doing an oil change on a guy, put the thing up, and the lift won't come down. So now it's called Getty. They send this guy over, Nick, who shows up sloshed. Nick is now under the fucking lift with the car on it with a sledgehammer banging it at the side of the damn thing. Then the owner of the car comes in. He goes, is my oil change done? Am my car ready? Oh, well, yes and no. And there's Nick banging away, and I'm like, holy shit, this is really fucking bad. So Steve and me get him out of there and figure out some way. I think we blew the packing on the damn thing. We got the car down, got the oil in it, and got it out. These guys that worked for Getty were unbelievable. They would have fights, throw shovels at each other, show up drunk. It was wonderful. One time they basically had to dig up all the old metal tanks and put in fiberglass ones because there was some kind of fucking leak that was going into the water table. It wasn't us. We found out later who it was. But, you know, here they are backing up. I had pictures of this shit, but I don't know where they are. Their dump truck almost falling in the hole, you know, shit like that. It was insane. People ask me about what cars I like to work on. Well, Cadillacs and Lincolns, because they were big and you can get into them and get all the plugs done and shit, as opposed to an 8-cylinder Mustang where you had to take the fucking battery out to do the last 2 spark plugs. A lot of crazy shit. I wasn't really a gearhead. I mean, I didn't go home with this shit except for the grease all over me and the oil. I wasn't interested in mechanics past making a living doing them. I did, you know, trick out my own van. I tricked out a couple vans, but that's because I could do it. It wasn't like I was going to make a hobby out of this. My boss, however, did, and he had a car club. I actually helped him build his car. I hung around for that. But these guys were totally into this stuff where I wasn't. And if you watch a movie called Eddie and the Cruisers, there's a scene where all these vintage cars are going across a bridge. I think it's down by Atlantic City, and that's my boss's car club. I think it was the East Coast Custom Car and Hot Rod Club. And yeah, that was another one. Another thing I brought up was the Crazy Joe thing because, you know, Charlie and my friend Turk worked on all the cars. Now, if you ever seen Crazy Joe, the end scene where there's the shootout in the restaurant, it was a street scene in New York. And what happened was, before they could shoot the scene, they had parked a bunch of the vintage cars there, but somebody parked a late model sedan there. I think it was a Pontiac. So being that Charlie's wrecker was vintage, you know, George Washington Bridge circa whatever the fuck, 1950 something, they used the wrecker to block out that scene because the wrecker would fit in on the street with that, and Steve and Charlie were in the front seat, and supposedly they were shot in the film. But I didn't see that thing. Matter of fact, we were in a bar one night watching the film, and Steve yelled out, "They cut our fucking scene, god damn it!" So, you know, that was a couple things too. I really didn't want to stay with mechanics because, like I said, it was beating the shit out of me, but I did go back another time, and I only lasted 2 weeks because, I don't know, I forget the exact situation. I needed money, and this guy had taken over the Getty station, knew I was a former mechanic, wanted me to come back, but then I found out that the reason he wanted me to come back was because he really didn't know shit, and he was also a ripoff. And my old customers used to come in, and I'd go, catch me on the side because I don't want, you know, nice to see you, but it ain't the same anymore and you're going to get screwed. So my segue out of there came to when this guy was a big fan of junkyard parts, which I wasn't. He brought back an exhaust manifold for a 6-cylinder, no, it was a 6-cylinder slant 6 Dodge engine, which was warped. You can't bend cast iron, but he thought he could. I'm sitting basically there watching a guy pound a square peg in a round hole, and I'm like, you know something? That's fucking it. That's really it. I'm done. So I got out of there. So other than I could still work on my own shit, my wife's shit, I really didn't want to have nothing to do with it. I could do a brake job in my driveway. I could, you know, any of that stuff. I kept it up on my own stuff for years. Until, you know, the other thing too was that when they changed over, they came out with the HIE ignition, high energy ignition, HEI ignitions, which became another problem because you had basically cars that would just stop running. And the reason they would stop running was because something happened with this HEI shit. Now in the GM vehicles, it was the rotors. The black rotors would get a burn spot in them and the car would shit the bed. So they had to be replaced with white rotors, which wouldn't burn through. The Chryslers had this thing called the ballast resistor, and 9 times out of 10, when a Dodge product shit the bed, you had replaced the ballast resistor. Like I said, it was just getting too complicated, and then the sealed carburetors that you would tune up on a guy's car for, I think back then, like $50, and then the car still ran like shit, and then you had to tell the customer that you had to basically remove his carburetor, chisel out these steel caps, and free up the adjustment screw so you could just adjust the mixture. That was also how you had to do with the emissions things too, because we were, you know, we could re-inspect cars. We had the license to re-inspect cars. So, you know, you played with the mixture until, you know, the emissions were right. Well, with sealed carburetors, you couldn't do that shit. So, just too much shit was changing too fucking fast, and it was, like I said, it was time to go. So, that sort of was the end of my mechanical career, but now I'm going to segue into something totally fucking stupid. I was watching TV last night, and they had an ad for something. If you're tired of taking these pills, basically we have a new treatment that can cure ED. All right, you can cure ED. This whole thing is something around here where basically you go to this clinic and they use ultrasonic waves to break up the old veins in your penis, and you grow new veins, and it increases the blood flow. It's sort of like, all these things are Viagra and shit are all supposed to be vasodilators and shit like that. So I'm looking at this thing, and they go, oh yes, and if you come in, you're entitled to the free ultrasound. Like, I really want some guy holding my cock in his hand, going like this on it. And you'll get a free gift that will give you instant results in the bedroom. Okay, you're advertising a medical procedure that basically will, let you get a woody again. And, but now you're getting something else. Well, I can have instant results in my bedroom by taking a couple X-Lax and falling asleep. That'll give me results that I don't want. So I don't know what the fuck they're talking about. You had the gauntlet of these, we call them boner pills. And even when I had the prostate cancer surgery, they wrote me a prescription for Viagra, which wasn't covered. And these things were like $20-something a pill back then. And I'm like, why are you writing me this? Well, we want to see if you can, maintain an erection. I'm like, that's fucking wonderful, but maybe I can maintain it, but what do I do with it? I'm single. So that never happened. And then, the thing with Viagra was that, you get that blue-tinted vision. You get headaches, whatever. Then they came out with another one. I think it was Cialis, and that one makes your nose run. So how erotic is that when you're making love to your old lady and the snot's just dripping on her? Fuck. So, yeah, I never got that whole thing, and I just, and the other thing too is the thing goes, and you get 2 free tune-ups. So, okay, this is supposed to cure ED, but you may need tune-ups down the road. What the fuck? I don't get it. Something, guys, when it's over, it's over. I gotta look at it that way. When it's over, it's over. I mean, there have been more weird things, and we call them boner pills, that have come out over the years that are supposed to enhance your erection. Well, I remember they had something they were selling in the adult bookstores called hard-on cream. And basically it was this thing that basically you're already hard and it numbed it. That didn't do anything fucking special. The other one was, what the fuck was it? Oh, Spanish fly pills, which were basically sugar pills. You can tell how wonderful they were, but like W.C. Fields said, a sucker's born every minute. And then there was ginseng. And I got a good story about ginseng because actually ginseng sort of works to a certain extent. I was down at my friend John Horner's warehouse, and it was called Placid Lake Salvage, and John was a former Marine. He was one of the first guys in occupied Japan when we won World War II. And all his buddies down there were all former Marines, including Big Dave and all that. So I go in there one day, and he's got these boxes of something that say Panax ginseng on them, Korean Panax ginseng. One's green and one's got royal jelly in them. So I go, what's the deal with this stuff? And he goes, oh, it gives you a boner. And I'm like, no offense, dude, but, do you really give a shit if you get a boner? So we had a little argument about that. So I said, fuck it, let me try it. So I took a couple boxes, and this stuff tasted sweet. It was like you just drink this little vial, and it did sort of work a little bit. So now I'm selling these at the flea market, and I had these 2 sisters next to me, and they were asking me about it, and I let it slip that, oh yeah, it gives you a boner. And they said, well, what do you do with it? I said, well, I dump it in my coffee in the morning. All of a sudden, they bought 2 boxes. Well, next week, they're buying more, and then other people are buying more, so the word spread, and I ain't saying shit about this. And then, as always, Norman got the shit too. When it was basically $3 a box, I'd sell it for $6 and double my money. So, to a certain extent, that worked. So now, before I had the prostate cancer, I'm still working for Norman. And there was this guy named Big George. And Big George actually owned the Mardi Gras and the Metropole go-go bars. And he needed some shit for the 60/40 stuff because I guess he had a piece of a store somewhere and they needed to do this. So he came in, told me who I was. I introduced him to Norman because this was going to be a big sale. Let Norm do it. But anyway, he was grateful and gave me this thing called Vim. It was 2 vials in this very attractive package. And I said, what's the deal with this shit? And he goes, open the vial, put it on, drink it, let it sit under your tongue for like 20 seconds and swallow it and you'll feel like you're 18 years old again. All right, so I go home, I'm living with somebody at that time, and I got this stuff, and I'm sitting there like looking at this stuff and telling her what he says, and she goes, you don't have the balls to take that. Well, wrong thing to say to me. Not only did it work well, it never stopped working. It was like that might have been the roughest weekend she had, and I went to work with abs of steel the next day. So, like I said, this shit really worked, and after I broke up with her and I got involved with somebody else who was sort of like, I'll just say this, everybody wants to get involved with a nymphomaniac. No, you don't, guys, you don't. Trust me, you don't. But I use that there. Well, I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden, he had an ad in Playboy for this shit. It went, I don't know, it disappeared, and all of a sudden, guys are selling a pill form called Vigor. And this big DVD distributor down in Florida was heavy into this, had a loaded warehouse, this and that and the other thing, and all was good. I never got the Vigor, but when I found out something that people were dying from taking this shit because it actually had fucking Viagra in it. And one of the guys who was pushing it was one of my video connections, a guy named Whiny Mike, and I ran into him at the Meadowlands Flea Market, and he told me about, I'm sort of fucked. I sold this shit and somebody passed away and I got to liquidate all my assets and get the fuck out of here. And that's the last I saw of them. So, I don't know. It's just weird. But like I said, the Vim really worked. And, there's been some fucking movies about disembodied cocks, for lack of better words. And wasn't there one, The Incredible Transplant, I think? I mean, there's a whole, I guess it's a subgenre of genitals that are in horror, or genitals that talk, because you had Chatterbox, a talking vagina. You had The Devil Below, possessed vagina. And you had this, The Gone with the Wind of the Severed Penises movie, Pervert the Movie. And this is like way out of print. It's actually a really good homage to Russ Meyer, and has Mary Carey in it. It has a lot, it's a desert locale. It has a lot of the quirky, weird characters that Russ would have in his movies. And you have one old guy who makes sculptures out of meat. And you have this disembodied, scurrying penis with eyeballs on its nuts or something like that. I can't remember. I haven't watched this thing in a while. But this is so far out, so over the top, it's actually funny. So I know there's sort of like a subgenre of like, disembodied dicks or something like that. But I really don't watch movies to see dicks, but this was an exception because somebody at one of the conventions gave it to me and wanted me to distribute it. I never heard from him again. So that's our little installment for today, and we'll get back to the hustling on the next one. And there's going to be a lot of stories. I'm just going to sort of like use movies as a segue to them too, because unless you want to really hear just nothing but hardcore hustling stories, and there's a shitload of them, we can do that too, but it's whatever you guys want to hear. So until next time, thanks for tuning in, thanks for subscribing, and we'll catch you on the flip side.